If you've ever hit an iron shot fat, thin, or just felt like your contact changes from swing to swing, chances are you're doing at least one of these things wrong. And the frustrating part is, most of the advice golfers hear about iron shots actually makes the problem worse. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 things golfers get wrong about striking irons, including one mistake almost everyone makes when they try to hit down on the ball. Once you understand these 5 ideas, iron shots start making a lot more sense. You'll start hitting the ball first, striking the middle of the club face more often, and controlling your distances much better. But before we start, if you feel like your swing has been inconsistent, I have a free training in the description box below that walks you through the key fundamentals for building a more repeatable golf swing. Let's start with a really big misunderstanding, trying to hit down on the ball. The first thing golfers get wrong about striking irons is trying to hit down on the ball. Now, the data is out there. Every professional golfer hits down on their iron shots. That part is true. But where golfers get confused is they think they need to try to hit down on the ball to make that happen. Let me explain why that's not actually how it works. The golf swing works a lot like a hula hoop tilted around your body. The club travels on an arc, and that arc has a lowest point. For solid iron contact, that lowest point needs to happen after the golf ball, not at the ball. That's why good players hit the ball first and then take a divot after it. If the lowest point of your swing happens at the ball, or worse, before the ball, you'll either hit the ground first or catch the ball thin. That's where you start seeing inconsistent contact and inconsistent distances. So yes, good iron shots do have a slightly downward strike, but the mistake golfers make is trying to force that downward hit. Hitting down is actually something that happens naturally when the rest of your swing is working correctly. In fact, if you look at what the body is doing through impact, a lot of it actually feels like it's moving up, not down. The lead arm is moving up, the chest is starting to rise, and the body is rotating through the shot. So while the club head is still traveling slightly downward, the body itself isn't trying to drive the club into the ground. You're staying in your posture, rotating through the shot, and letting the arc of the swing create that downward strike. And this problem really makes hitting the longer clubs in your bag hard. If the attack angle becomes too steep, you'll start hitting very low iron shots that struggle to get into the air. Once you get into longer irons like a 6-iron or a 5-iron, that steep strike makes it almost impossible to launch the ball properly into the air. In reality, the amount you hit down with irons is very small. We're only talking about a couple of degrees, just enough so that the club contacts the ball first and then continues down to the ground after it. When the swing is working correctly, that downward strike simply happens as a result of good mechanics, not something you're trying to force. So I'm going to show you where most golfers mess this up and what you should feel instead, and then a quick drill to get this right. So where most golfers mess up is they're really trying to hit down and the handle's dragging down, and it's more like you're chopping wood and you're really feeling this handle going down into the ground. So I'll hit a shot and with more of that feel. It's a little bit exaggerated, but the ball goes lower because I'm really focusing on hitting down. You want to hit down, but hit down in the right way. And so if you look over here, the ball got 22 feet off the ground, even though my club head speed is plenty high for the ball to go into the air. I'll try to let me hit one a little bit harder. So we can get it into the air a little bit more. And that's generally what happens with golfers is everything's tilting down, 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 down. So let's see the apex on this one real quick. 63 feet. So what you should feel instead is that your shoulders, this is how you get to your impact position. Your shoulders turn flat through and you tilt back. And what you want to feel instead is that everything goes up. So I want you to twist the upper part of your lead arm to the right and hold it in that position with the trail arm and pull up, pull up. And this is how you should be coming through impact, like this. And the handle's coming up. See how the handle's coming up and the club head is still going down? Handle up, handle up, handle up, handle up. The handle's still coming up. and then eventually the club comes up. But the handle's been coming up for a while before the club head starts to come up. So let me hit a shot and we'll compare the apex on that one. And you can see just how, even though I hit down on the ball, you'll be able to see just how much higher the ball goes once it pops up. And so you can see that ball went 100 feet into the air. That's how you start getting those towering iron shots as you're hitting down, but the attack angle is not as steep because you're feeling like you're coming up, but the club head is going down. The next thing golfers get wrong with iron striking is placing the ball too far back in the stance. And this usually goes hand in hand with the previous mistake we just talked about, trying to hit down on the ball. Golfers hear that you're supposed to hit the ball first and the ground second, so the instinct becomes, well, if I move the ball farther back in my stance, I'll definitely hit the ball first. And at first, it might even feel like it works, because if the ball is far enough back, you probably won't hit it fat as much. But what ends up happening over time is the ball keeps creeping further and farther back until you're practically playing it off your back foot. The funny thing is, once your perception gets used to that position, it starts to feel normal. It can even feel like the ball is in the middle of your stance when in reality it's way back. Don't ask me how I know that. The problem is that moving the ball back is really just a band-aid for the bigger issues happening in your swing. It might help you avoid hitting behind the ball, but it also makes the swing steeper, reduces your ability to rotate, and often leads to those low, inconsistent iron shots. So here's a quick way to check your ball position. Place a club on the ground, parallel to your target line, then place another club across it at a 90-degree angle so it forms a cross. That second club should be roughly in the middle of your heels or even slightly closer to your lead heel. If the ball is positioned somewhere around there, you're generally in a good spot. For most golfers, that's about where a 9-iron should sit in the stance. Now, if you want a simple way to understand why that position works, think about the arc of the golf swing again. The club is traveling down, reaching its lowest point, and then starting to move back up. What we want is for the ball to sit just before that lowest point, so we can strike the ball first and then the ground second. And so you might say, when I have the ball in this position, I hit it fat. And the reason you were hitting it fat is because your body is not moving to its impact position. The process I would generally use is to stand tall, turn your shoulders flat through the ball, then tilt back so your body is at its impact position. Now have the lead upper arm twisted to the right, hold it in that rotation, and pull up with it. So the club should be following this arc where it's going down and then eventually comes up. Now you're pulling up without shrugging your shoulder. The shoulder stays down, and then you keep bending your body more and more over until you find the first moment that the club hits the ground. And then directly behind that point should be where the ball is placed, so you can hit the ball, then the ground, like all the pros. Now you might ask, Nate, do you think about all that stuff when you're setting up to the ball? How do you know if you're getting that right? Well, that's a different video, but basically I'll do my setup quickly. I get my arm set up, then take my stance, and I instantly know that the ball is in the perfect spot. But yeah, that's a different video. The next thing golfers get wrong is tilting forward. From the pelvis to the sternum, you should still have tilt back. Just because this is an iron, you're not all of a sudden changing your entire technique. Now, if you're trying to hit it lower, yes, but your standard shot, you want to get the ball in the air. So where a lot of golfers go wrong with striking the irons when they're trying to hit down is there's really two centers to the swing with your body. There's the middle of the pelvis, which is the middle of the belt buckle, and then the middle of the sternum, which you can put a finger here. And for a lot of golfers, these two are stacked on top of each other the whole time. And the ball comes off really low, which I'll demonstrate that here. So if they're stacked on top of each other, the ball is going to go really low. And actually, even with irons, what you should feel is that there's a natural tilt back. It's supposed to be only with driver, but it's still the same way even with irons. Everything doesn't magically change just because you're going from a driver to irons. There are differences, but not as much with the tilt. So I want to give you a quick drill to help you feel this. And it's just a quick connecting of the dots. So at impact, put a finger here on your belt buckle, finger on the sternum. And we're gonna start straight up and down. We're gonna turn our shoulders flat, so they're still on top of each other, but then we're gonna tilt back. So the belt buckle is gonna stay where it is, and the upper body is gonna tilt back. And so now the belt buckle is in front of the sternum. And so then we're gonna go in the backswing, and then tilt our upper body forward, which feels like it's gonna go more that way than the belt buckle, more behind the belt buckle. And then again, we're gonna go to the impact position, and then top of the backswing position, and feel where these two are. And so now we're gonna try to swing back to that position, and then back to that position. So go from position to position. And feel how, where I'm facing the ball, if I had these two stacked on top of each other, there's no way that I could get to this impact position where I have all the weight forward, I'm rotated open and tilted back. There's no way I can get here if these two are stacked on top of each other at setup. There has to be tilt back, and that's how you hit down and get the ball up in the air. And so naturally, there'd be just a little bit of tilt. See that? That lead hip is bumped a little bit forward, and the upper body tilted just a little bit back. That, even with irons, is the natural tilt you want. And the closer you have your stance, the less tilt back you're gonna have. That's why with driver, you're gonna have the most tilt back because the stance is the widest. And now watch with iron, see how these two dots are getting closer together. The sternum is now getting closer because you can't have all that tilt back when the feet are closer together. So I'll try to hit one. And the ball gets up into the air really nicely because I have this tilt back and the weight is still getting forward. The next way golfers mess up is when they have this proper ball position. So it's set up when the ball is in the middle of the stance to farther forward. Most golfers do not address it correctly. They get this right arm more over and everything starts to veer slightly left. The hip's going left, the shoulder's going left. So how do we get the club head behind the ball if we are not turning to face it? Well, we shift everything forward and tilt our upper body back, which if the club head is attached to our body, sends the club head farther forward. So instead of thinking about facing the golf ball at setup, thinking about staying close to the ball, shift a little bit more weight forward, and the last bit that remains, you tilt the upper body back to get the club head behind the ball. This will help to influence rotation in the backswing and keep that tilt back. The final thing golfers get wrong about striking irons isn't really a misunderstanding. It's a disconnect between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing. A lot of golfers think they're getting their weight forward, but in reality, they're not nearly as forward as they believe, and they are flipping at the ball because they're not forward enough. Most likely, if you're not forward enough at the top of the swing, you won't get all the way forward at impact because your brain takes over to try and hit the ball. So before you ever swing down from the top of the swing, the hips should be closed and you should already be forward. If you try to shift forward as you're trying to turn, as you're trying to tilt back, it just probably won't work out like you want. So you should already be forward. And there's no easier way to learn it than to hold your belt buckle and get in balance, turning back and through, flat to the ground. And feel where your belt buckle is at the top of the swing when you are in balance, turning back and through. And then put a ball under where your belt buckle is and reset it setup. And then take a golf swing and pause at the top and see if you were actually where you think you are with the belt buckle over the ball. Okay, so let's recap. So the first mistake is trying to hit down on the ball and pull the handle down instead of just getting the weight forward and pulling the lead arm straight and actually feeling like you're pulling up and letting the events happen naturally. The second mistake is shoving the ball way back in your stance, which is going to cause really low shots. And if you actually rotated properly and got the weight forward properly, you'd actually thin the ball or top it like that. The third mistake is thinking with the irons that you need to be really tilted down, when in actuality, you remain tilted back. The fourth way is when the ball is in the right spot, turning to face it like this, which is going to cause those weak slices. I couldn't even hit the ball good doing that. And instead of doing that, instead of turning to face it, getting the weight forward and having that proper tilt is what's going to get the ball or the club head right behind the ball so that you can hit the better shots. And then the final mistake is thinking that it feels like your weight's forward, so it definitely has to be forward when you're probably not as forward as you think. You should be here, here, in the middle of the belt buckle, should be over here where the ball is. And it feels like my weight's forward now, but I'm actually gonna hit behind the ball and my belt buckle is here, and I can actually be even more forward. And so if I hit a shot from here, I hit 2 inches behind that one, whereas if I get the weight forward, I will hit the ball first because I'm forward enough here. I'm forward enough, and then I catch it clean like that. So those are the 5 mistakes that golfers get wrong with striking their irons. I hope these tips help you to play more consistent golf. If you want to hit even better, I have a free training below that shows you the key fundamentals for building a consistent golf swing. I hope the rest of your day goes well. I'll see you in the next video.